sorry. Recycling, how are we going to assess or evaluate, sorry, coming from a teacher here, the success of the program? Do we have any, it's too early to decide, but I know the first thing I did with the schedule, I confirmed it because there were conflicts over on Lakeshore Road for folks that I know live on Lakeshore Road, and they called me. I marked my calendar, circled every Monday, so I put the recycling bin out for Tuesday. And I noticed that people put the recycling bin out every week. And people have things other than recyclable goods. So how are we going to, again, communicate to the public this message of the proper way of recycling and the schedule? And how do we know if we are really saving money by reclaiming recyclable goods versus
our recycling committee is awesome. I will have to say they have pages that people, there's a ton of followers on there. I don't know how many. I hate using the word ton or a lot of things that I like to quantify what those are. But I can already report, we got our first quarter report from Republic. We are 18% down on solid waste and 8% increase in recyclables. Okay. So it's working, and I think as more people get used to it, and the recycling committee is going to be, I think what we talked about, I think last year, Truman, was to really start educating how, what can we do to educate our public. I think there's still some old recycling, what do I want to say?
Habits.
Yes, so habits. So there's, our contract is unique in that we can recycle numbers 1 through 7, if you flip over plastic.
Yes.
A lot of communities only can recycle 3 of those numbers. We can recycle 7, so that's good news. But they have taken the initiative. We have a very active recycling committee, so if you want to join it, that's, but they're going to be doing some educational pieces. We've given them some money, and we have some sponsorships that will support that. So we're real excited on where we're heading with the recycling, and hopefully we're hoping we can get the same type of garbage bin soon as well.
Okay, good. I just
and we've already had people request additional bins at $65 a piece, so we've already had people that are requesting more bins.
Okay. Oh shoot, I forgot my other question. I'm tired. Yes, so to the budget, 2017 budget, thank you, by the way. To the budget, there somehow was 11% tax increase, actually 11.1% tax increase, and yet there was a budget surplus. So I know this was a question we were going to meet this probably should be answered in an open forum so the public can hear. 1, how did we end up with a surplus? And 2, what are we going to do with that?
It's not a surplus because we're still in a deficit, cash flow deficit situation. What those are is we put a budget in place, and it's a guideline. So with that guideline, what we've asked the department heads to go over the last 2 years is we set the budget correctly. Some in the past. He said I spend $80,000 in gas, and they only give me $50. Shorts the budget, we get into a deficit situation. So now we fund the budget correctly. If they don't spend it all, which we've put a $200 pre-approval limit, which sort of controls that. We look at every voucher, we make sure. And when I say we look at every voucher, there's 3 sets of eyes on every voucher. So we, and before it gets pre-approved, is it really necessary, especially coming off these last 2 years where we're trying to, so if they don't spend it, that's good news. It's not a surplus.
Okay.
Because we started with, in 2016, $2.1 million that they borrowed from the previous year, spending 16 money to pay for 15's expenses. So we're $2 million behind in 16, just with tax revenue, but it's all budgeted. But it was all budgeted to be spent. So we have to slow down spending. So that's what we've done. Nowhere in that transfer document, in our resolution, did it say surplus. Okay. How you're going to create fund balance in the future, when we get out of the deficit, is by not spending what we've appropriated. Whatever we don't spend, we put in a fund balance. That's what you want to happen. That's good news, that we didn't spend everything we had. But we didn't spend everything we had because we didn't have it. We're still building, coming out of that negative fund balance that we're appropriating. So we've made a great deal of progress. We started with about 2.1, and I want to say 400,000. So we've made progress. And
So 400,000 is left?
Still a deficit.
Okay, from 2.1 million?
In 2 years, that's quite an accomplishment, and that was because we had department heads that understood, and, you know, the spending was very, conservative, very conservative. So it's not, when you say we set up the tax appropriately based on what, it's our best guess based on history, but you gotta remember, we don't have a lot of history to go on, because before 2016, remember, the accounts weren't reconciled for 4 years, so we're trying to build cash flow patterns and, correct funding.
So how does one look at this, like with the numbers? Not me, but somebody else were to look at this accounting on the budget. How do we see the deficit to the reduction to 400,000, and how did we come to 11%? How did you decide to go 11% tax increase for the 2017 budget? How did you? Wouldn't you come up with the amount to increase our taxes first based on the figures that we were short?
No, we didn't raise taxes to cover the deficit. We're covering the deficit by controlling spending.
Okay.
But
our taxes went up 11%.
Because we're playing, you gotta remember, and I can only speak from when we took office and Mike just took office. So in 16, we inherited the budget,
Okay.
8.66. Still had $1 million hole in the budget. Healthcare was underfunded by almost 900,000. So when we get the budget in 16, we're facing a $2.1 million, which we know a deficit.
Mm-hmm.
And then we've got a hole in our budget by about 1 million, okay?
Okay.
So that tax raise that they increased at 8.6 didn't cover the expenses because the expenses weren't true. When they set their budget up, I'm gonna use Ed because that's here, because I know what happened to him. He needed 80, he got 50. He overspecs. So the budgets weren't set up correctly. So when we get 16, we're still faced with, there's not enough money in the budget. So we, in 17, when we did our budget, we looked at all the line items. We have decreased our spending in almost every department.
Okay.
But we're playing catch up because now we have good numbers to go on when we set our budget. I mean, we sat line by line, 16 and 17, to try to set up correct budget. So 11.2, and then now you're facing healthcare. I mean, now we're trying to fund for past years, and healthcare increases in double digits. Garbage increased by $25 because, again, underfunded. We're still correcting some things, but we have addressed every outstanding audit issue and have addressed, so when you see the audit this year from our external audit, it's good news. So we've addressed every outstanding issue on the state audits as well as our own internal audits over the last 3-4 years. This is the first time in probably 10 years our accountant could render a financial opinion on our town. So that's good.
I'm sorry, say that again?
It's the first time in 10 years that our accountant, our external auditor, I should say, auditor, has been able to render a financial opinion on the condition of our town.
And what was their finding?
We had it was a clean audit. No significant deficiencies that this board controls.
Okay.
There was we have addressed all our.
And how would that affect our bond rating?
We're going back out, actually I have a meeting on Friday to go back out for a bond rating, so hopefully well.
And tomorrow, are you going to, how are you going to explain the budget at all?
We'll explain the milestones that we've reached in our budget,
Okay.
yes.
Okay.
So, and we're gonna show where spending has been
decreasing since 2015 and flat in some areas, gone up a little bit. Because you gotta remember, employee benefits are a driving factor in tax increases. I mean, healthcare was up 15%, or retirement was up 200, workers' comp was up 100. Just by those virtues alone, we have no money to go to in reserve, so we have to, you know, that's why the increase was very minimal. That was really just to cover those increases in employee benefits.
Okay. All right, thank you.
You're welcome.